Good morning, all, and thank you very much, President Howard, for your kind introduction. And it's good to be back to DC and get a chance to see lots of good friends. And I think it's been a privilege for me, together with my colleague from TACRO, to be invited by James Chen Foundation's nice annual Defense and Security Conference as a featured speaker. And I was asked to talk about the China's influence operation against Taiwan, which I'll try to put into the context of the regional as well as the global strategic environment. I'll start off by offering what we view the nature of the Chinese Communist Party. And I also try to touch upon some aspect regarding what's going on in Hong Kong in terms of CCP's influence operation against Hong Kong's anti-extradition movement. And then I'll focus on how we, the Republic of China, Taiwan, we view the whole things that have been developed and evolve into the imminent threat based upon our experience in fighting against it. And what we believe the most is that Taiwan's unique status should not be perished. In an era where the Chinese Communist Party is jeopardizing the world order based on liberal democracy, human rights, market economy, and rule of law, the Republic of China, Taiwan, is at front and center of that world order. Taiwan is in a similar situation to Ukraine and Baltic state, at the front of Russia's sphere of influence. Yet Taiwan is unique in facing CCP's PRC, the most powerful party state in the history, that is determined to terminate Taiwan as it is. The struggle between liberal democracy and totalitarian dictatorship is central in the discussion of CCP's sharp power, cognitive warfare, influence operation, and mind control. The history of Taiwan ROC since 1912, especially since 1949, is a process of democratic enlightenment. CCP's rules in China is based on Deng Xiaoping's four cardinal principles in 1979. And Xi Jinping has further catalyzed that into totalitarianism with modern technology. The situation in Hong Kong is a salient example of Beijing's desire to undermine political and civil liberties, as well as subordinate individual human rights to the overarching authority of the party state. From the perspective of cognitive warfare, defined as the capacity to weaponizing knowledge, Taiwan has a unique vulnerability as Mandarin Chinese is the common language for both China and Taiwan. With the unrestrained resources and centralized policy at its discretion, Beijing could easily monopolize or overwhelm the Chinese-speaking audience cognition, thereby achieving the PRA's goal in terms of subliminal cognition manipulation. We believe that the Xi Jinping's digital Leninism is threatening the world. Xi Jinping rules China by emulating imperial era governance, only reinforcing it with advanced surveillance technology. Dr. Stan Ringen termed this combination as perfect dictatorship of a party state. Xi's regime is now evaluating 80 million party members based on their test score of Xi's thought in the Little Red app on smartphones. And since September this year, journalists are required to pass the exam of Xi's thought to keep their job. The PRC's social credit system, to be completed next year, is the peak of Orwellian treatment of China's entire population. And also influenced by Marxist and Leninist economic determinism, CCP intend to appropriate modern global means of production to perpetuate the party's life. Since Deng Xiaoping open door policy in the 80s, CCP followed the path of state capitalism, accumulating wealth disregarding rules of market economy. For this purpose, Xi Jinping has sought to achieve a series of fait accompli through ploy like Belt and Road Initiative or China Standard 2035 and other long-term strategies. Xi also strived to consolidate the South China Sea fortification, the gradual appropriation of aerial, cyber, Arctic, and international adoption of China's preferred technological standards. As it has done so, Chinese has bypassed international rule-based regimes and taken advantage of the West's dismissal of war as a conflict resolution tool. With investment in think tank, social organization, and elite of other countries, using Confucius Institute, LinkedIn, and other hybrid techniques, CCP broadened its foreign influence to cultivate a pro-China public opinion in the world. A grand international propaganda strategy was launched in 2009. The Chinese Central TV is now airing in at least 170 countries in 5 different languages. In the meantime, Huawei, ZTE, CE, IEC, and Hikvision export surveillance equipment to Philippines, Cambodia, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, UAE, Argentina, Morocco, South Africa, etc. And Huawei is installing safe city solution in cities of more than 100 countries. CCP's propaganda efforts is more effective in Latin America, Southeast Asia, and Africa, and less so in the West, at least for now. CCP has also launched cognitive warfare during the trade war with the United States for discourse supremacy, manipulation of American voters, and Chinese nationalism. The latest propaganda show in this September highlight and preached the Chinese strategic patience and that of the U.S. economy growth will slow down. The United Nations is another key multilateral platform for CCP's infrastructure and cognitive campaign efforts. CCP inserted its BRI objective into UN Sustainable Development Goals logo and released it on UN website. Chinese national Zhao Houlin and Liu Fang were re-elected to lead ITU and ICAO respectively. This year, the CCP successfully secured leadership of UN Food and Agriculture Organization through the so-called hybrid warfare. The intelligence suggests and indicated that the campaign began with CCP canceling more than 200 million euro in debt for African states, leading to the African candidate withdrawal. And before voting in June, CCP eavesdropped on communication of the French candidate, and that leads and forced French government to install encryption devices. On the voting day, the CCP took no chance, providing transportation for pro-China voters, and Chinese candidate won the election on the first round. Now I'd like to turn to CCP's cognitive warfare against Hong Kong's demonstration this year. Hong Kong's anti-extradition to China movement is an epic battle with global and cross-strait implication. CCP has long offered Hong Kong's business tycoon with national prestige, such as through appointment to the NPC in exchange for their political support, including by appropriating media under their umbrella. CCP resorted to cutting advertisement or even gang-related violence for those who refuse to yield. CCP's Hong Kong Central Liaison Office actually controls half of Hong Kong's publishing company. And based on this network, CCP at early stage of the demonstration pointed at foreign involvement to manipulating cross-strait relations and Taiwan-US ties, or in order to ensure that the peaceful evolution in China would not take place. It is worth noting that after demonstrators hung up a large banner calling for Xi Jinping's death and Xi Jinping's demise on September 27, Hong Kong police fired their very first live round and injured a young protester on October 1st. Whether there's a causality is important. CCP regards the role of the U.S. Congress in Hong Kong demonstration as a threat to national security. A Shanghai-based think tank, a PRC foreign minister, alleged that the U.S. Congress has interfered China's domestic affair by passing Hong Kong-related legislation, such as Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, issuing report on Hong Kong, funding NGO activities, supporting Hong Kong opposition politicians, as well as pressuring the executive branch. Hong Kong's 2019 pro-democracy protests also exposed the weakness of CCP's cognitive warfare. Hong Kong protester activities were so flexible and warlike to the extent that some Chinese observers suspected the U.S. military was supporting the Hong Kong demonstrator with telecommunication broadband capacity. Intelligence showed that the Hong Kong demonstration seemed to apply the unrealistic warfare that generates impact on financial, trade, legal, media, and ideological dimensions. The pro-China media, such as Oriental Daily, admitted in August that both CCP's intelligence and propaganda in Hong Kong were utter failure, and CCP's parroting and smearing campaign seemed to endorse this admission. Let's turn to CCP's influence operation against Taiwan. Xi Jinping has articulated that the rejuvenation of China cannot occur without the so-called reacquisition of lost territories, as he set a deadline of 2049 to solve the Taiwan problem vis-a-vis annexation. China influence operation against Taiwan is an integral part of CCP's digital Leninism and could be conceptualized under its party ideology and national security. Xi's speech on struggle at the Central Party School in September this year confirmed this priority, which inadvertently revealed that the survival of the party matters the most and is the cardinal imperative. And this imperative constitutes the fundamental differences between CCP's party state and the rest of the world. As of today, the CCP's Taiwan policy is guided by Xi Jinping's 5-point remarks in January this year, which dictate PLA military coercion, external isolation of Taiwan, infiltration and subversion, united front interaction, cyber activities, and disinformation dissemination. From the cognitive perspective, all these activities are incorporated in propaganda framework intended to shape Taiwanese mindset, preferably to the extent of annexing Taiwan without bloodshed. In 2018, CCP launched a relatively new statehood eliminating campaign with the name of Namefair that sought to efface all trace of Taiwan's sovereignty status, particularly in private sector and NGO. As for the military realm, CCP's military shock and awe coercion against Taiwan had a new cognitive dimension this year. As reported by overseas Chinese newspaper, World Journal, in February, two Chinese scholars visited California in January to meet with former U.S. intelligence official to convey Xi Jinping's forceful unification plan by 2022. They revealed that Xi would work with Russia, Iran, and North Korea for a coordinated scenario in the Middle East and Northeast Asia to constrain the intervening U.S. forces for Taiwan. At that time, the plan sounded like a groundless bluff in the midst of Sino-U.S. trade war. As it turned out in this year, the Xi's plan seemed not so groundless. Then Russia Tu-95 bombers circled Taiwan proper for the first time on June 20th. And PLA Air Force and Russia aircraft jointly patrolled the East China Sea on 23rd of July, also for the first time. As of October, North Korea has conducted 11 short-range missile and SLBM tests. And after Saudi Arabia oil refinery attack incident in September, the Iran announced a joint military exercise with China and Russia in the Western Indian Ocean. And up to now, CCP's role is still unclear, but there's a similarity with Xi Jinping's plan. CCP has pursued a united front interaction and infiltration in Taiwan for decades, having reached quite widely and deeply in our island. CCP has developed a coupling network of local government across the strait, as well as 24 business, media, and semi-official representatives in Taiwan, cultivating a wide connection. And some of them have engaged in activities beyond their publicly stated mission. There are at least 22 pro-China organizations, political parties, and we have identified a number of them with connection to organized crime, further extended their networking to local temple, Taiwan businessmen in mainland China, and Taiwanese youth. On the other hand, CCP's cyber activity are an imminent threat to Taiwan. The cyber force successfully hacked into Taiwan's health insurance data around 2010, thereby appropriating vital demographic information on Taiwan's population structure. And from 2016 to July this year, CCP cyber force launched more than 21,000 of attacks against Taiwan, targeting defense, foreign affairs, overseas service, medical service, maritime and firefighting institute. Many of these attacks were conducted through relay stations, and nearly 300 of them around the world were used by CCP hackers in between January and July this year. CCP has long cultivated influence on Taiwan media, and since 2015, CCP has attempted to overwhelmingly engage Taiwanese media through a so-called cross-strait media summit. In May this year, this summit was hosted to assemble executive delegates from 80-some Taiwanese newspaper, TV and radio station, news websites, cinema, and publishing industry, a scope meant to monopolize perception of Taiwanese audience. While China's effort to sway Taiwan's public opinion might arguably work in some incident, it has failed to undermine Taiwan's sovereignty and national identity. A poll released by Taiwan Mainland Affairs Council on May 2019 showed that 83.6% respondents oppose the so-called one country, two system formula, and 78.5% support Taiwan government's vindication of liberal democratic institution. Another poll released by National Zhengzhi University this month showed that 40.3% prefer maintaining status quo and independent later, while only 3.7% prefer maintaining status quo and unification later. CCP's meddling with Taiwan election dates back to the 90s. The 95 to 96 Taiwan Strait crisis were meant to intimidate Taiwan voters ahead of the first direct presidential election. And CCP's cyber force hacked into campaign headquarters of major political parties for 2008 presidential election. As for Taiwan election in 2018 and 2020, CCP established a multi-departmental task force in late 2017 to evaluate election, finance pro-China parties, support mainland spouse group, Aboriginal talk show hosts, and website writers. And in 2018, mandated by CCP's, the so-called Central National Security Commission, PLA Strategic Support Force was tasked to coordinate propaganda, cyber, and Taiwan Affairs Office, as well as the United Front Department, to conduct the so-called cognitive warfare to shape Taiwanese public opinion. Beijing developed the so-called self-media, or social media as we call it, to disseminate video message on YouTube, mobilize armies of internet poster and chatbot to overwhelm discussion. It also worked with China's own information technology company to categorize, constitute, design issues, evaluate manipulation, and modify strategy accordingly. It also induced pro-China media and internet celebrity in Taiwan to echo CCP's message on Facebook, Twitter, Line, and other social media. These activities constitute a new modus operandi of CCP's cognitive warfare against Taiwan, which challenged Taiwan's response capacities. In the run-up to presidential election next year, Taiwan's National Security Council judged that due to pressure from the trade war, and particularly the Hong Kong crisis, CCP would spare no effort to coerce Taiwan diplomatically, economically, militarily, and divided politically, regardless of election outcome. CCP needs to act tough to harness nationalism for domestic purposes. Under certain unusual circumstances, CCP might exert national maximum pressure, such as announcing timetable for unification. Technically, before the election, CCP could hijack another one or two of Taiwan diplomatic allies, mobilize Taiwan businessmen in mainland China, and oversee pro-China voters to return to Taiwan vote, and launch military intimidation event. And after the election, CCP could then initiate a new cognitive campaign, either of unification by force or of coercive political dialogue, depending on which party wins. Let's turn to Taiwan ROC's effort. To be responsible for Taiwan's destiny, President Tsai Ing-wen proposed in her guidance, her capacity in March 2019, the guidance for countering CCP's Taiwan vision, a version of one country, two systems in various dimensions. In the legal realm, the Tsai administration has comprehensively reviewed 11 laws and about 134 regulations governing the cross-strait interaction and define and will make necessary amendments, such as expanding scope of treason and define in the criminal law, including protection of sensitive technological information in national intelligence law, and enhancing punishment for violation of that law. With respect to countering CCP's infiltration and interfering in Taiwan election, Taiwan NSB has formed a task force integrating intelligence organization to monitor underground financial transactions across the strait, local gambler, arms and drug smuggling, gang-related violence, and unusual activities of certain foreign visitors, and take appropriate action accordingly. And in terms of countering cyber threat, Taiwan government has formed an ironclad triangle for cybersecurity, integrating NSC, Executive Yuan, and National Communications Commission. NSB is responsible for early warning and cooperating with Ministry of National Defense, the police, and the Investigation Bureau, as well as international partner for relay station detection. In terms of disinformation countermeasures, some newspapers now have the so-called rumor terminator section. The security apparatus also identify disinformation and forward them to proper government organs to deal with them. In order to enhance public awareness, Taiwan government has cooperated with private sector to produce internet video program on disinformation and fake news. Having said all these, Taiwan still has a lot to do. And we do appreciate the support by our like-minded friends around the world, the United States in particular. The U.S. Congress passed Taiwan Travel Act in 2018, Taiwan Assurance Act of 2019, and Taipei Act are being legislated. In the first Indo-Pacific strategy reported by the DoD in July, Taiwan is categorized as a partner of vital interest to the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary level official visit Taiwan to show support. The global training and cooperation framework managed by the U.S. and Taiwan has made impressive progress. Lately, attracting Japan, Sweden, and other countries to participate. Additionally, Taiwan was invited to join the U.S.-led coalition to counter ISIS. The White House once called Beijing out as Orwellian nonsense when it launched NAM Fair to coerce international companies into its One China policy. We appreciate in particular the U.S. government persistent concern of Taiwan's national defense, manifested by the latest sale of M1A2 main battle tanks and F-16V fighter jet. Last but not least, the U.S. and Taiwan cooperate closely in cybersecurity between intelligence and law enforcement community. The U.S. authority shared with Taiwan the deepfake technology development, CCPs meddling in the U.S. midterm election 2018, and later this month, with the help and support from the United States, British experts are invited to Taiwan for a workshop to share the UK's balanced approach against disinformation. In November, the US and Taiwan will conduct a multilateral cyber exercise with Germany, France, EU, Japan, Korea, Singapore, India, and other countries. As for the future, in light of growing CCP's digital leninism threat and looming urgency for complete unification, it is increasingly difficult for Taiwan to survive on its own. From the cognitive perspective, with the US support, it is worth considering that Taiwan and like-minded countries form an inter-regional alliance of cybersecurity and combating disinformation, where we can share origin, dissemination, and other pertinent early warning information. The objective of these alliances is to safeguard freedom of speech and to explore regulation of internet activity. As part of the Indo-Pacific strategy, the U.S.-Taiwan could consider signing a joint MOU on combating disinformation, as Taiwan is the real-time combat zone where CCP is preparing for a game-changing eventuality with its influence operation to avoid bloodshed. CCP's activities and Taiwan's defense experience could serve as a valuable reference for the free world. Besides, we could also further expand the cognitive interoperability among us. For example, through bilateral US-Taiwan FTA agreement, US-Taiwan Plus Security Architect, more cooperation between Taiwan Public Television Service and HBO Asia, or more Taiwanese appearance in CNN Hero, to name just a few. Ladies and gentlemen, in March 2019, President Tsai Ing-wen pronounced in her duty to confront the national security threat of a new era and to preserve options for Taiwanese of future generation. She then asserted that the key to peaceful development of cross-strait relations is democratization of China. These remarks suggest that ROC Taiwan uniqueness is an inspiration for Chinese democratization, a key element in responding to Chinese Communist Party's influence operation against Taiwan. It is reassuring that Assistant Secretary of Defense Randy Schreiber recently mentioned that U.S. will continue to help Taiwan maintain its unique status. And in a sense, let us respectfully paraphrase President Abraham Lincoln's words: Taiwan as a nation of the people, by the people, and for the people, shall not perish from the earth. With that, I conclude my remarks, and thanks for your patience. I'm looking forward to maybe interact with you later on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I